Hello there. Today we are talking about big prints. This one was made about 10 years ago on a little crop sensor DSLR that I took on my honeymoon. But how many megapixels do you need to make big prints? What kind of camera can you make big prints with? In today's video, we're going to discuss it all. We're going to look at examples and hopefully it will leave you inspired. So come with me. Right, that picture does need some love and attention. I've not treated it very well over the years, which I'll explain in a minute. But before we get going today, this video is sponsored by Squarespace. If you need a domain name, a website, or an online store, make your next move with Squarespace. It's sweaty work moving those big prints around. But one of the questions I get asked often is, how big can you make your prints? Do you need any sort of special camera? How many megapixels do you need? What resolution? All that kind of thing. And when you go onto the internet, into YouTube, what you will often find is people saying that you can blow any image up to any size you like and it will look good. Now, there is some truth in that, but I think there are a couple of things we need to be mindful of, because printing this big gets expensive and I don't want you to waste your money on printing something that turns out not very good. So the primary things that we want to be thinking about are, what is the viewing distance going to be for the image that you're making, and how much fine detail do you want in it? Because if you blow up an iPhone shot that big, the fine detail just isn't going to be there. However, this picture here is a good example of where viewing distance will allow you to get away with so much. Now, it's taken on the Canon 550D. That was, if I recall, an 18 megapixel camera. And it did, for a while, take pride of place in my living room. And it looked great. But when you got a little bit closer, because it was blown up so much, you started to lose a little bit of fine detail. But just viewing it a meter or two back, you couldn't notice that, and it's always looked great. We then moved, and it got damaged in the move, and then I just stuck it in the garage, and I'm ashamed to say, neglected it for a little while. I've now brought it down to the studio, and I'm going to use a bit of glue to stick it back onto that board that it's mounted on. And then I'm going to put it up high where you can't get close to it. And as you can see, it's actually quite damaged. But that viewing distance from down on the ground to where I'm going to put it will just forgive all of that. So it's still going to look great up high on the wall. If you want that fine detail, that's where we need bigger megapixel cameras. And it gets a bit more expensive in terms of how we are actually producing the image, but we can still do it. We can still blow bigger pictures up. It just means that you lose the fine detail. So it's about, what do you need? What are your requirements? But today I am looking forward to getting something quite special, or what I hope is going to be quite special, delivered. We're also going to look at a phone photo and just to see how that holds up, so we can compare something taken on a phone, on a DSLR, and then we're going to look at medium format as well, hopefully, if it gets delivered. So, I'm going to start by getting that up on the wall. Right, there we go then. And I actually think I'm really, really happy with that. As you can see, it's up there now. And you saw how damaged and destroyed that print was. And you can, at the moment, still see some of those creases in it that I was unable to get out when I was gluing it back down. It's really nice to have it back on display. But it's a really good example, I think, of where, if the viewing distance for the image or the work that you're going to be displaying is not right up close, you can get away with loads. Viewing distance is such a big part of it, but I like to view my images up close. I like to get in there and see the fine detail, but we'll discuss that more in a little while. What I'm also interested in is, what can you get away with a phone camera? Can you make decent sized prints with a phone camera? So a phone has become one of the most effective tools for photographers these days, whatever the level you are at. I mean, I probably take more pictures on this than I do anything else these days because I'm really only doing landscape photography now. So I take pictures of my kids on this, I scout landscapes with this. They do take good pictures, but despite all that, with a phone, you are still, or they are still, essentially fighting against physics because only so much light can go in to these tiny, tiny lenses. And the sensor is still small as well. So I want to now make a print. It'll be the biggest print I've ever made on a phone. And I'm going to do it as A2. If you're thinking about printing an image from your phone, it really needs to be really well lit. And if you're in a landscape on a nice sunny day, that's going to be fine. And that's what I have here. From this moment, at the last moment of a Light and Land Lake District tour that I did. It's a cracking moment. And I was too busy sort of teaching, so couldn't get my proper camera, my DSLR. So I just snapped a quick shot with the phone. I've edited it a bit and I think it looks really nice. It's one of the best rainbows I've ever seen. So I thought it was a really good image to print because it's about the best settings you can hope for on a phone. So let's send that over to the printer with A2. I'm going to put a little border on it as well and we'll see what that looks like and what the results are like. Right then, so here it is, and I am actually really, really happy with that. It's worked out really nicely. Just looking at it from probably about a meter away, it looks great. There's a bit of a triple rainbow going on as well, if you can see that, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, even from sort of arm's length, it looks pretty good. But there are some limitations to it. This is A2. I think A2 is a lovely sized picture that you would put up on your wall and would be pretty big on most people's wall. But there are a couple of issues with it. As you get close, and like I said, I like to get close to my work, it becomes a little bit mushy. You lose that image quality as you go in close. Also, where that double and triple rainbow is, because that's really faint light, it's not picked it up all that well, and it's just a little bit mushy. The colours get a little bit mushy in that sky, and that's because of that, I think. And ultimately, there are two points to make. I think if it was just for me, and that one is, I'm absolutely thrilled with it. And this should really be an indication that you should go ahead and start printing your photographs, because I'd much rather have that print from an iPhone than have a really good DSLR where I'm only looking at images on a screen. That's an absolute no-brainer. So phone and print way above DSLR and screen. So I think that's the first point. That's the most important point. Secondly, though, is that for me, that's not good enough to sell. As a professional or someone that just sells prints, I don't think that's good enough. I would not feel comfortable charging hundreds of pounds or even less than 100 for that image. I just don't think the image quality is there. But as a piece of work that I've made for me of a moment that was really actually quite special, I'm so pleased I took my phone out and captured this. And I'm also now really pleased that I've printed it. And I think it's an actually really nice example of what a phone print can look like at A2 size. And really, if I wanted to blow it up even bigger, I could. As long as we maintained that viewing distance, it would still work absolutely perfectly. If all you've got is a phone, you should definitely, if they're in good light, definitely try and print some because it still looks good. There's a lot of non-photographers that would never know that that was taken on a phone if you didn't tell them. And I think that's really saying something. Yes, I think it's here. Come in. Thanks, mate. Right, before we unbox the print, as you know, this video is sponsored by Squarespace. Now, Squarespace is just the perfect place for photographers to build their own website. It's so easy to do. You need very little technical knowledge. It's just a case of dragging and dropping bits into your website and building it up with your own images and a little bit of your own text. And you can have a really beautiful looking website up and running really, really quickly. And then if you wanted to, you can develop it into an online store to sell some of the prints things like we're talking about today. And that's so easy to do, and it will grow with you. I use Squarespace for my website. It's been brilliant the entire time, and I don't think it's ever let me down. There is 24/7 customer support. So yeah, I think you should give it a try if you're considering a website. Go to squarespace.com to start your free trial today, and then if you like what you've created, use the offer code FIRSTMAN to get 10% off your first purchase. Right, I'm excited. Let's get this print unboxed. So the story of this photograph started a few weeks ago when I asked Fujifilm if I could borrow the Fujifilm GFX 100X. That is a medium format camera, which I featured in a few previous videos, but I did go out with my friend on a shoot, and as you know, I mucked up the audio on that video. So I would have shown you the moment that I made this image. Hopefully you're seeing some of the footage here. And it's just a really special location for me. It's very close to where I grew up. I've shot it a number of times before. Shooting that location with my best mate stood next to me. It was a very lovely moment. And because I had that camera with that big megapixel sensor, I wanted to make this print. Now, a lot of people will say that photographs are designed to be viewed from a distance. And to be honest, mine are not. Every time I find myself in an art gallery or something, I go through this process that I will view an image from far back. I'll then get in close to see the fine detail. Things like with a painting, you can see the brushstrokes. And then I take a step back and I almost have like a fresh appreciation for the work, knowing that all that fine detail is there. And I love that with my landscape photography as well. And it's what I want from my big prints. I want you to be able to get in close and experience that. And I'm hoping that's what this image has done. Right, I'm gonna get it unboxed. I'll show you what I've come up with, and then we can talk a little bit about the technical aspects of the print, because this, I think, is a particularly interesting way of making your prints, and I'll also let you know where I got it done. Right, let's get into this box. So this is why I love landscape photography, starting off by going into nature, enjoying the outdoors, the mental and physical boost that gives you, and then following it all the way through to creating a final print, a final piece of artwork. It's just so satisfying. And when you do it this big, that kind of sends the satisfaction to a whole nother level. I am absolutely thrilled with this. And I love the fine detail that medium format camera has allowed me to capture as well. I can appreciate it standing back and then getting close and see all that detail. The people at the top of the hill there, some of the buildings in the background, it's all there. And I just love it. I'm so happy with it. But let's talk about the print for a minute, because I used a slightly different technique. So with photography, it used to be film, and it was an analog process right through to the final print. But even people that are shooting film now, there's generally some sort of digitization somewhere down the line. With obviously the medium format digital camera I was using, it's digital at the start, but then this C-type print that I've had done at the print space finishes off that whole process with a genuine photographic process. So this is the Fuji matte paper, and it's a photosensitive paper where the image is exposed onto the paper and then it goes in a machine, but it goes through the chemicals, and then the final product or the final image comes out at the end. Does using a photographic process like that C-type print add any value over using inkjet? I think for me it possibly does. And I think it's giving me the same feeling that I used to get when I shot film. And I'm not really romantic about that kind of thing, but I really love this. And that Fuji matte paper just gives me the exact amount of gloss that I like. It's kind of a semi-gloss. It isn't rag paper, but it's the Fuji matte, and it's just got that slight gloss on it that I just think looks utterly beautiful. I'm so happy with it. But the truth is, you can make big prints like this from any level of megapixels or camera. It's just a case of bearing in mind that viewing distance and the fine detail that you want. If you're not bothered about the fine detail when you're close up, then you can pretty much do anything, even with a phone camera. But all I would say is just to use the best image you possibly can. Get the best image quality you can out of the gear you have, because that will result in a better image once you get it blown up. And it is expensive. It's not cheap at all. This cost me about £300 in the end. Once you get it mounted as well and shipped and blown up to this size, it does get expensive. So you can imagine the markup. If you're selling this kind of thing, you can imagine the markup on top of that you're going to need to do to sell it. So just bear that in mind, and that's why I don't think you want to be doing it with anything other than your very best images, and maybe one that you've already had printed out at a smaller size. But I would really urge you to give it a go, because the more time goes on, the more I think that when it comes to your printed photographs, bigger is better. So I hope you've enjoyed this look at big prints today, and I would just encourage you to go out and give it a try yourself, even if you just start off small, but give those C-type prints a try as well. And I think you'll be really, really quite pleased. Anyway, I'll see you again very, very soon. I'm Adam. This is First Man Photography. Out.